Let's talk magic mushrooms. Why do I want to dose myself with magic mushrooms, also known as psilocybin mushrooms? It's mostly because I had done it in the past and I felt like I glimpsed a world that was really wonderful and that I learned some things, but I don't even know what I learned. But it seemed profound, and I felt like I had to go back. I feel like I have to go back to that place where I once was. And then just thinking about it now, I have a lot of fear because you kind of never know what's going to happen. I mean, when you take a recreational dose, you kind of have an idea what's going to happen. But when you take what they call a heroic dose, you really just don't even know what to expect, kind of. I mean, you might have a sort of an idea. Like, it's so hard to explain, but like, say one great experience that I had, or let's just call it a good experience. I noticed in a room, I noticed that all the corners of the room and the corners of the walls, like the edges, they had like sort of like an electrical impulse shooting down them. And I had this feeling that it's always there, but you just can't see it, that you can't perceive what's happening until your mind gets undone in that way. And then it's open to see a whole nother like reality. And so I feel like it opens a door that lets you see the world as it really is. And that it's not a hallucination, but it's more like an unwrapping of like what preconceived notions and ideas that we normally throw at the world all the time are like removed, and then you can see the world as it is. Or it's really hard to explain. And then it usually leads to a lot of introspection, like thinking about family, thinking about past loves, thinking about even animals that I knew in the past, and I would have like immense feelings of love and like a new understanding of how I felt about things. And I usually end up crying because of that like overpowering sense of love, and then sometimes that sense of loss, and it just hits you as like really profound. And the thing is, too, like the one time in the desert when I was laying on a rock, like a big huge rock, this was in Oregon, and I was laying back on this rock, and I felt as though I was pulled inside the rock, and that the rock, it wasn't the rock, but it was more like the earth or something was communicating with me. And there was like an octopus that like grabbed hold of my spine and pulled me down, and then shot tentacles into my mind, into my brain, up through my spinal cord, into my neck. And it pulled me super hard up against a rock, almost like a vacuum force. And then I remember even telling it, let's just call it an entity, but I was like, teach me. Like it was kind of, I can't really explain it, but I just like had this surrender, this moment of surrender, to just let it like take my mind. And there was like all these realizations about my parents and how much I love my parents and how I hadn't treated my parents well. And um, my daughter, there was like a whole flood. Like, there were like floodgates were opened up, like an emotional floodgate. And it was like good, but it was like sort of frightening. Well, let's just say like emotionally draining. And then that is like maybe was the good parts of that trip. I mean, I had some really good going into it. I had some really cool feelings about the world around me and perceiving the clouds in the sky and the colors and the junipers and the sagebrush and the wind and it was like a really, I loved the world. I loved the world so much, and I loved being in the world and being a part of the world, and I just felt so unified with the world. And then the trip turned bad. It turns out I had been sort of rolling around on the ground. And then I don't even want to talk about the bad parts, but it got really scary. And then I just wanted out of the trip. I just wanted out of the trip so bad. I just wanted reality to come back. And so ever since then, I've been wanting to go back to that place, but avoiding that last part, the bad part, you know. And but I've known I was gonna go back. It's like a place I was that I can't wait to go back to, but I'm frightened at the same time. It's almost like going to visit a haunted house, you know, but the haunted house is your mind. And then I've I feel there's some things that I don't want this time around. Like, I don't want the cats around me at all, because you never know what'll happen. And I thought that I burned everything down. I thought I burned up the car and the cats were in the car, and then I was throwing water in the car, trying to cool it off, even though it was just like a melted mess. And I know it freaked the cats out. You know, it just was a bad scene. That part was bad, you know, so I don't want the animals around me. Although there was one time the animals were with me, this was a smaller dose, and I loved them so much, you know, but just because I don't know what I'm capable of or what I'll do, like, would I start something on fire? Would I don't even know. All I know is it's just best if you don't have children or loved ones around, or pets, probably, because it could just complicate the trip, you know. And it's funny that Emerson came right at that time that I was talking about the cats, but and then, you know, you can be crying and rolling around on the floor or the bed, or, you know, I often find myself on the floor in like a fetal position or like a praying position. So it's just such a trip. It's just such a weird trip. And then, okay, but what I'm hoping for, why am I thinking about doing it? It's because I'm just hoping for relief of myself, relief of whatever's bothering me, these demons I have inside me. And I was doing some reading and thinking about the dosing, and, you know, I'm thinking maybe this time I want to work my way up. Because when you get a batch of mushrooms, you never know how strong they are. So you kind of, if you just went for, like, say, a 5-gram dose right away, you could be opening a real can of worms there, you know? And so I was thinking, well, maybe this time around I'll just start with the 1 gram dose and just see how, I basically feel, and then maybe I'll jump up to 3. And then one of the weird things is like you can't do it. Like if you do it today and then you do it tomorrow you won't really have much effect at all, or maybe no effect. It's like your mind's got to get some kind of chemicals have got to build up in there. And then when you do the shrooms, it all gets released, and then you could do more shrooms the next day, but it doesn't do anything to you. That part's so strange. And it's not really a tolerance thing, I don't think. I'm not sure what it is exactly, but... So, but this time around, I feel like I can't get this set and setting right. Like, how am I going to get away from the cats, And then am I going to just trip in my camper? I mean, in a way, I could imagine, putting my headphones on. This time I really wanted to get like a playlist and go in with like an intention. And then, because I've been doing a lot of reading, and they say that music helps, but only certain types of music. And so I was kind of thinking I would try choosing the music wisely this time. And then that closing your eyes, or even putting like a blindfoldy type thing on is key. And then, but they really recommend having a person to sit with you. And that's the part that I feel like, boy, I really could use that, And, but then how are you going to find somebody to, wants to like just watch you trip like that? And I don't know. It's gotten all complicated. But, I was just thinking more about the how-to. And I've tried this one thing called lemon teching, and acidic stuff is supposed to help, like with the digestion and everything. And so they say to mix it with like lemon juice. That's why it's called lemon teching. I have had luck just mixing it with coffee, but the taste is so awful. The taste is so rancid and just nasty. I like to make it into like almost like a shot, where you just do it as a shot, and I think maybe this go around I'll try it as a coffee shot and see how that goes. Because the coffee's acidic, and then your stomach can't really digest the matter that is those mushrooms. It's like let's say it's like woody or something, and so a lot of times you vomit because of that woodiness. But the vomiting is also supposed to be part of the purification process. Like you're vomiting out all those bad emotions and bad feelings. And but I just hate vomiting. But I know there was like, when I've experienced the vomiting, it seemed like it was part of the process. Like I was vomiting out badness or something, or negative energy, but I don't know if that part's true. I just kind of think it doesn't settle well in your stomach, and it's basically sort of like poison, so your body tries to get rid of it, maybe, kind of like that. I don't know, but I have tried putting it in like a ninja and pulverizing it, and that seems like it worked better. I think the last time I did it, I didn't vomit. But just thinking about the scary stuff, and I'm talking about not like microdosing for subperceptual benefits. I'm talking about like a full psychedelic experience. And then the big fat idea with this is dissolution of ego, that you lose yourself, which is a fascinating topic. And but I just was thinking about it. I want to just read a couple things here. It says that your psychological state, often referred to as set, a person's current mindset, expectations, and emotional state, can profoundly impact the experience. And then the environmental context, known as setting. The physical and social environment where the substance is consumed can determine whether the experience is perceived as positive or distressing. And so set and setting, cat. Set and setting are like, key. And the term heroic dose refers to a high potency consumption of psilocybin mushrooms. This was popularized by Terence McKenna to describe an often large quantity of dried mushrooms taken in a solitary, dark environment to induce a profound and intense psychological experience. At such high levels, the effects are often described as overwhelming. Common experiences reported include ego dissolution, a total loss of the sense of self or individual identity. Now, I had stepped into that realm that day the rock sucked me inside of it, or connected with me, or whatever happened there. Mind melded with me. And that's like a scary part, it's just that part's kind of scary. Then there's intense sensory distortion, profound changes in visual and auditory perception that can make it difficult to interact with the environment. And that's scary. That's like when I was starting to come out of that trip. There's a certain name for that. I want to say it's like tapering out or falling out. There's like a name for it, and I perceived that I had burnt everything down, and that maybe I had burnt my arm and melted my phone and all this stuff. And it seems so real that I'm super scared of that again. I don't know what. And then the altered perception of reality, significant shifts in the perception of time, space, and one's surroundings. So, that's a real Pandora's box right there. If you get untethered from all that stuff, you're just floating in another world that just, geez, oh Pete, man. I'm getting scared again just reading about it again. And then here it says that it's important to note that consuming high doses of psilocybin carries substantial risks. These include extreme anxiety, panic, paranoia, and potentially dangerous psychological distress. Due to the intensity of these effects, the experience can be unpredictable and difficult to manage. Well, you think that's what scare you away just right there. I mean, come on, man. Come on, Now, let's just talk about the risks a little bit more here. They have a section here called, the primary risk of ego dissolution during a heroic dose of psilocybin center on intense psychological distress and the potential for long-term mental instability if the experience is not properly integrated. Now, when I had that trip out when I mind melted with the rock in the desert, I wasn't the same for 3 or 4 weeks. I just didn't feel like myself. I was having some strange feelings, just like even weeks later. Like it really took me a while to go back to feeling normal. And it says, while some people find the death of the self to be transformative, the absence of identity can lead to extreme vulnerability. Acute psychological risks. The immediate loss of one's ordinary sense of self, often called ego death, can trigger severe adverse reactions. Anxious ego dissolution. This is the distinct negative state characterized by extreme panic, fear of going insane, or the sensation of actually dying. Now, I went through that. I felt like I had gone insane and that I just couldn't wait for reality to come back, but I wasn't even sure if I was coming back or if that was the new me and that I was going to have to face the consequences of burning the wilderness down, the car down, and I, you know, I still am just kind of speechless about that whole bit. It makes me feel pretty freaked out just thinking about that. So the fear, and you have that fear like maybe you had gone insane, and then there's something here called shadow flooding, which, well, that sounds fun, doesn't it? Without the ego's protective filters, long buried trauma, grief, or deep seated fears can flood the consciousness all at once, leading to emotional overwhelm. So that's that part that I like and am scared of too, because I had that shadow flooding, like, that all those feelings about my parents and my mom especially, and like all that flood of like just overwhelming emotional, maybe, grief and some long buried trauma there, and then paranoia and confusion. High doses significantly impair the ability to distinguish fantasy from reality, which can result in dangerous behaviors or persistent paranoia during the trip. So yeah, I worry about those dangerous behaviors. Like, I wouldn't want to do it near a cliff where I could possibly jump off a cliff, or, just for some reason think, okay, go ahead and follow through with those suicidal thoughts because I had been unburdened. But like Kamala Harris says, I would get unburdened by what had been, and then, just decide it was a great idea to jump off a cliff or maybe scale a cliff, or, so I don't want to do it in the mountains because there's a lot of cliffs around there and stuff, and that was what was nice about the desert, and I decided I don't want any form of fire or even a past fire pit, a lighter. I don't want anything like that around me this next time. I don't even know. But so that's also what would be nice about having somebody else there to kind of keep you from going having some dangerous behaviors. And I don't remember any paranoia as such, And then there's this loss of agency. Users may lose the sense of ownership over their own thoughts and bodily actions, which can be profoundly disorientating. Yeah, that is part of the fear, And then I'm already at 23 minutes here, but just going to go let's just delve a little deeper into the long-term psychological risks. There's the impact of a high dose experience can persist long after the drug is worn off. See, that happened to me last time. Depersonalization and derealization. Some individuals feel unmoored or detached from reality for weeks or months, struggling to reestablish a stable sense of identity. And I had that feeling of being unmoored, but I didn't and haven't liked who I am or who I was, so in a way I didn't mind it, but it was very disorientating for weeks after, just kind of waiting for that to come back, whatever that is, and then there's persistent psychosis. In vulnerable individuals, which I probably am one of those vulnerable individuals, especially those with the family history of conditions like schizophrenia, high doses can trigger lasting psychotic episodes. I don't even know what to think about that, I don't have a history of schizophrenia but I do have a fear that, say, weeks later you'd be psychotic feeling, or that it, that you just kind of, that just part's scary. And then there's a hallucinogen persisting perception disorder. This involves long-term visual disturbances or flashbacks to the intense upsetting experience. Well, I don't really know what to think about that, because whenever I think about my experience, I have lots of good thoughts about it too, and then here's another one. I'll maybe make this the last one here. Spiritual bypassing or superiority. Returning from ego dissolution can sometimes lead to false enlightenment, where an individual develops a sense of spiritual detachment or superiority that distances them from others. I don't know, that almost sounds like a positive side effect there, but so wow, just reading it just really makes me think I gotta be careful here, and as much as I want to re-scramble my brain, maybe the timing's not right. The place is not right. So I really got to think about that. And just kind of after just spending a little time talking about it and reading this, I'm just like, I'm going to do the 1 grammer and maybe the 3 grammer in another week or two. Maybe I'll wait 2 weeks for the 3. But I think I'll put the hero's journey off until I'm out in the desert again. And who knows how long that will take. But this is all a super sketchy topic. But I don't see why we can't talk about it. I don't see why we can't be open about it. If anybody has any thoughts, if anybody else has any experiences, if anybody just listening to me feels like they want to tell me how they feel about me doing it, I'd kind of like to know that. I don't know, just any of your thoughts surrounding a psychedelic spiritual experience, and then the possible ramifications and or consequences and benefits, maybe. But well, that's all I got today. Thanks for listening to me.